He was the second largest billionaire donor for democratic causes in the year 2022. Sam Bankman-Fried, the founder of the cryptocurrency exchange FTX, was convicted of defrauding customers and spent his 33rd birthday in jail being interviewed by Tucker Carlson. What a birthday present. Carlson asked Bankman-Fried why he was abandoned by Dems. This was his response.
In 2020, I was center-left, and I gave to Biden's campaign. I was optimistic he'd be a sort of solid center-left president. I spent the next few years in D.C. a lot. I made dozens of trips there and was really, really shocked by what I saw, not in a good direction from the administration. By late 2022, I was giving to Republicans privately as much as Democrats. And that started becoming known right around FTX's collapse. So that probably played a role.
Bankman-Fried spoke to Tucker Carlson virtually from the prison. He said this about being in the same unit as Diddy. Let's watch.
Have you made friends there? Are you hanging with Diddy? I think he's in there with you.
He is. And I don't know. He's been kind. Obviously, I've only seen one piece of him, which is Diddy in prison, and he's been kind to people in the unit. He's been kind to me. It's a position no one wants to be in. Obviously he doesn't. I don't. As you said, it's kind of a soul crushing place for the world in general. And what we see are just the people that are around us on the inside rather than who we are on the outside.
The duo did, of course, also discuss the hot issue of crypto and its future under the Trump administration. Let's take a look.
Right now, crypto is not quite at a point where it could become an everyday tool of, a quarter of the world or something. The tech isn't there yet, but it's not that far away. And this is an if the industry keeps making progress rather than getting distracted too much by market prices, then, 5-10 years from now, you could imagine a world where all of a sudden it is the case that anyone can have a crypto wallet, a billion people could use it each day, with privacy, with security, fast, cheap, international, all the things that, that was promised and that absolutely are distracted from by the latest meme coins.
In March 2024, Sam Bankman-Fried was sentenced to 25 years in jail. Wow. So I gotta say, just right off the bat, I love these kinds of jailhouse interviews. I actually find them to be beneficial to the public, and Tucker Carlson gets it. I guess good for him. Sam Bankman-Fried's PR guy and his crisis manager is not happy. He was actually working with this really high-powered PR guy named Mark Botnick, and he resigned. He resigned. He resigned. Just
because of this interview.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's like, I didn't greenlight this. I didn't sanction this. Right. And he has a history, Sam Bankman-Fried, of talking to journalists in ways that get him in trouble in court. A lot of his interviews that he did on podcasts and sort of bragging to different reporters about stuff ended up in his trial. And I wonder what we were looking at yesterday, where he spoke in some unvarnished ways to Tucker Carlson about working with Democrats in the crypto industry, and Gary Gensler at SEC could come back to haunt him.
Do you think he is making overtures toward Republicans or toward MAGA people? Because, he did very conspicuously say, I think it was the first or second clip we played there, about how in private he was moving over to the Republican side and had been, even though he was very much identified as a donor to Democratic causes. How did you interpret all of that?
He's definitely making overtures. He mentions in the course of the interview the pardon of Ross Ulbright of the Silk Road, also, a cryptocurrency situation where in the early days of crypto, a lot of the transactions were for illicit items and things on darker corners of the internet. The industry has evolved, gone mainstream, been adopted by credible financial institutions at this point, and he is trying to position himself in that same vein, like he was ahead of the curve on something. So he is angling for a pardon from Trump world, and he did say that he was giving privately to a lot of Republican donors or Republican politicians by time the DOJ came after him. Now, what he is suggesting there is that maybe Democrats caught wind of him changing sides, and therefore he was punished politically. I think that this will probably get him nowhere and not reap the reward that he wants.
Right, because, I mean, to be perfectly frank, his case was not one that I followed as closely as I followed some other cases, but I had thought that the allegation, such as it was, of political interference in his case, was that Democrats, or a Democratic Justice Department, had not gone after him as vigorously or as early as it might have because of his identification with Democratic causes. So it seems quite a 180 to then say, well, actually it was because they somehow had got wind that I was moving to the right and they then did me in because of that. That doesn't seem plausible on its face to me.
Yeah, the narrative on SBF's case changed numerous times over the course of his trial. And, you know, kind of going back to the beginning, the long and short of it is that this was an $11 billion fraud case where he was misappropriating funds that were flowing through FTX and the crypto exchange, and then using that money to prop up his hedge fund, Alameda Research, which was bottoming out. So he was taking money in, misappropriating it to prop up another business, and the house of cards just comes falling down. You know, the personal side of the interview I found to be pretty interesting. Tucker Carlson was asking him about his demeanor. You know, if he's off drugs, you know, he's less quirky than he was throughout the trials, where it seemed like he was very much coming down off of pills or something more extreme. And then they also pivoted over to Sam Bankman-Fried's belief in altruism. And so just the idea that money should be raised and given out to causes overseas, effective altruism, doing the most for people overseas and communities that you'll never see or touch. And Tucker Carlson wanted him to consider, you know, why don't you just help people in your life, your family? Why don't you try to benefit your community instead of this sort of idea of, you know, lifting up communities in sub-Saharan Africa? And that was probably the most interesting part to me.
And did Bankman-Fried have a good rationale for that?
Yeah, I mean, he said he has not changed his opinion on effective altruism at all. And then somehow the conversation veered into Tucker Carlson recommending that he have children.
Might change his mind somehow.
It was a pro-natalist conversation that I did not expect. So I wonder what kind of kids SBF will have. But I will say, just on a matter of substance, he brought up something that was very tangibly interesting, which was Biden's SEC chair, Gary Gensler, and the incredibly hostile environment that Gensler created for the crypto industry during the Biden years. I mean, just this morning on NPR, Duke University professor was on there talking about this very thing, that the hostility towards the crypto industry was so intense. It was an open war that crushed innovation in this sector and made it impossible to bring new products to market, to get approvals for your crypto exchanges. And so they just weren't accommodating this in any way. And so the Trump administration has an opportunity to let the industry innovate, because if they're going to do this strategic Bitcoin reserve that they just signed an executive order on last night, the industry is going to have to advance its technologies to the point where consumers can use cryptocurrencies for everyday things, and we're just not there yet.
Fair enough. I am one of the many people who really has no idea how crypto works or what it's about, so I'll take your word for all of that. We have more to talk about on Rising right after this.